Bum ba bum 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 ba bum ba dum bum bum ba bum ba dum bum bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum dum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum 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 bum. We did it. We're here and we're streaming. I am tired. I am very tired, but it's a good kind of tired. It's that kind of like I've worked kind of tired. I went to the gym the other day and I did a lot of leg work. And I'm finding that it's not the day after that's the worst for me, it's the second day. It's it and I'm in no, I'm what am I even talking about? Whatever. My legs are tired. And I went for a good walk down on the beach and I got some chicken wings and it was raining the whole time. And walking in the rain and standing on the beach as the waves storm over while my legs are feeling like jelly. I'm tired. That guy, how you doing? Good to see you today, my man. Good to see you today. I'm going to pause in about 20 minutes because I'm going to see if I can get the TikTok live going because it would ended up only being a day-long ban, a 24-hour ban. I feel like what I got to start doing when it comes to this TikTok streaming thing is I need one. I think I'm going to make it so that Tuesday is a no TikTok day, and Tuesday is just going to be that's going to allow me to just like get everything out of my system because a big part of the reason why I do this is to just get a lot of stuff off my chest. Hold on, something weird is happening on this. There we go. There we go. And then I think I'm going to make the extra days, TikTok days, because TikTok won't ban you if you're reading articles, right? So I can say all the stuff that I want to say, but do it by like reading articles. Jamy Labeouf on Twitch, good to see you. Good to see you. Gabriel, good to see you. Long Defiant. So many antibiotics in capitalist chicken. Yeah, yeah. Honestly, the big reason I like the half price chicken wings is like one thing, but it is like just getting out of the house, get to the beach, have a nice meal. Uh-oh, Content with the vilest headache. Vilest headache. Well, you've come to the right place, my friend, to deal with that headache. Let's stare directly into the eye of Sauron, shall we? That'll help you with your headache. Let's take a look at our mortality for 3 hours. Come on, everybody. Let's peer deeply into the dark, cold, dead eyes of imperialism. That'll help you with your headache, content. Because that's what we're doing here. Jamie asks, what's the topic for the day? I mean, from Medium, right? Like, I don't it's the same topic, Jamie. It's always going to be the same thing. Like, the Empire operates in different ways, and it does different things, but not that different, right? And so we're just seeing more and more reports and more information coming out. Yeah, that guy, I know, shocking. Shocking, that guy. 89% of all equities are owned by institutional investors and ultra-wealthy individuals in 2024. Whoa! Hold on a second here. Whoa! Whoa! Shocking. Shocking. You know, like it's just like it's always going to be this way. We're commenting on the decline of Western civilization, right? Like it's always, and it's just going to get like comically obvious. That's what I think is going to be really great, watching the civilization. Like I feel like we have since COVID, there has been a general turning point where the society has like gotten like I can stand up and shit on capitalism and people are not really like they don't fall back on the old tropes. I don't really get the get a job crew anymore. And when those guys show up, they're obviously demented. And they get dogpiled really quick because everybody is pretty aware that that's a stupid thing to say. So the society is shifting. But I think the society is like still stuck in a pattern of horror that they're looking at it aghast. And I just can't anymore. I just can't. It's such a fucking joke. Like, the West is a fart joke. If it wasn't for the fact that we were still killing people, we would just be a comedy. Like, people would look at us and be like, ho, 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 what a bunch of dumb idiots. And we are. We're a bunch of dumb idiots. Like, the problems we have are solvable. And it would actually be easy to solve them. The trouble is that we've given power to these institutional investors. The tyranny of the institutional investor. Boom, boom, boom. The modern investment landscape is dominated by a troubling reality. A staggering 89% of all equities and stocks are owned by institutional investors and the ultra-wealthy elite. What we gotta do is we gotta tax people to build more houses, and that'll get the housing crisis under control. Those houses certainly won't be bought up by the 89% equity owners. David, I don't know if I've ever seen you here, David. If I have, hello. If I haven't, hello. Good to see you. The concentration of financial power in the hands of a privileged few poses a grave threat to the principles of a fair and democratic market. You see how they're still talking as if we have a democracy? Like, everyone else. Okay, this is how I talk about myself. This is how I've noticed myself. Is that Chairman Milo I hear in the background? Yes, it is. He might make an appearance. Everyone else is still in the, like, red alert, warning. Oh, goodness, there's a crisis ahead. And I'm just not doing, like the warning period is over, man. Like, we're dealing with it now. We're here, right? The only people who are still going, oh, goodness, warning, are, like, clueless rubes who are so detached from reality that it's taken them this long to be like, oh goodness, there are consequences. Oh, when I take a look down from my ivory tower, I see that there's reality. And you look back 20 years and you're like, oh, these people were saying this the whole time. People who were living in reality and experiencing it were telling us all about it the whole time. And what did we say when we said it? Get a better job! What are you, Larsy? Here's Jordan Peterson. Right? So, get bent. Now all of these liberals are running around being like, oh my goodness, consequences. And I'm like, yep, eat it. Like, eat the biggest pile of shit possible. Right? Democracy, more like demo-autocracy. Well done. Well done, sir. Long Defiant writes, I'm still convinced the most revolutionary thing you could do is grow your own food. Absolutely. Build something new in the rotting shell of the old. Yeah. Non-participation. This is the path forward. It is the path forward. Like we have to participate to a certain degree, of course, but building parallel systems, non-participation, that's the way forward. At the heart of this issue lies a fundamental conflict of interest. Hold on, I just realized I didn't get this set up. I'm a professional. I know exactly what I'm doing. I am a professional streamer, goddammit. And that means that I come ready, preloaded, all of my articles are vetted. At the heart of the issue lies a fundamental conflict of interest. These large institutional players, such as pension funds, hedge funds, and asset management firms, do not invest with the same motivations as the average individual investor. Their primary concern is not the long-term health and prosperity of the companies they invest in, but rather the short-term maximization of returns to satisfy their own stakeholders. We know. Like, we fucking know. Oh, people over on Twitch have questions. Please bestow upon me thine gracious questions so that I might illuminate your mind. I don't know. I was looking for something, but I didn't get there. I'm in a silly mood. I'm going to say it. I'm tired. but I'm silly. I'm that silly kind of tiredness. I hope somebody comes. You know what I was thinking about all day today while I was walking around and on the beach and everything? I was thinking about that thing that people say, and I hope that somebody says this. I hope that somebody says this. Capitalism is human nature. I hope someone hits me with that, because boy, am I ready. I'm ready for that one. Glockwork Orange asks, was just banned from another chat for asking this. Oh, good. Well, does anti-Semitism equal Nazism? I mean, anti-Semitism isn't Nazism, but I mean, anti-Semitism is racism, certainly. Like, it's a form of bigotry, without a question, without a doubt. Like, being anti-Semitic doesn't mean you're Nazi. Being a Nazi means you're anti-Semitic, though. For sure. Like, for sure. So, yeah. Strange question, friend. I'm gonna keep an eye on you. Are the people on Reddit saying Russia wants to invade Europe liberals? Yeah. So these pro-pal, I don't understand your question. All right. It's just nice to see that the society is beginning to actually, like, confess, you know? Like, this is in Medium. Like, this is from Medium magazine, you know? Like, it's like, it just seems to me like the obviousness of the collapse is getting so serious. But we're still stuck in this pattern of, like, warning, and you know what we should do is we should support this policy. It's like, that's all over, man. Like, there's no support of policy. Like, none of those policies are going to get through, right? The system of capital has killed the systems. Like, everything you're seeing is just a destroying building. Glockwork, I feel like you're really struggling. Like, I feel like I'm looking at a guy who's really, really struggling. First of all, pro-Palestinian people are not anti-Semitic. They're anti-Zionist, right? That making the distinction between Judaism and Zionism is key in your understanding of what's going on in the situation. Just because Zionists have co-opted Judaism, right? Like saying that Palestinian people or that pro-Palestinian people are anti-Semitic is akin to saying that people who are against Nazism are anti-German. Right, it's a straw manning of the argument, and it's not a serious argument to make, right? So, yeah, it's just a very unserious question, and just because, yeah, most of the Zionists are Jews, right, and come from that cultural background, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean anything, right? We're standing up against Zionists. You're the one that's making the anti-Semitic connection, right? Like, you're the one that's committing the anti-Semitic trope, right? Like, you're the one that's insisting that, oh, well, if you're against Zionism, you must be against Judaism, right? So you're the one making that connection. You're the one making the anti-Semitic statement. And if you'd like to stop, you can stop now. Yeah, I would argue that that guy says, I'm an anti-Zionist Jew, we exist. Yeah, I mean, I would argue that most Western Jews, like, Zionism has become like a true cultural force within Israel, right? And it's a real problem. Like, it's a real serious issue that needs to be confronted, for sure. Like, for sure. And if it doesn't get confronted internally, it'll get confronted externally. Right, like the Middle East is not going to tolerate Israel for much longer, and it seems like it's coming to a head in that way. And it seems like more and more serious players are becoming more and more serious about standing up against Israel. And like, when I say more and more serious players, I really do mean, like, China has gone along with Iran. Yeah, here it is. China supports Iran's position after attack on Israel, right? Like China, you can't get to be a more serious player. Hold on. The guy said because I was not pro-Israel, I was a Nazi. Like, I'm not pro-Israel. Like, I'm not, I mean, I'm pro-Judaism, certainly, but Zionism is obviously a plague. Like, it's so obviously a plague now. But you just need to take a look at their own footage. You just need to take a look at their own soldiers talking on TikTok, right? Like, just go to the IDF social media and take a look at it. You'll immediately be like, oh yeah, these guys are like, this is a dark, bleak, evil people, right? And so if you're trying to pretend like that doesn't exist, then you got a real problem on your hands. Yeah, it's almost like saying that the Nazi swastika is akin to that Hindu symbol just because its design was adopted and worn by bad people. Although one is a symbol, one is a religion. I don't actually understand what point you're making there, bud. Sorry. Yeah, and Zionism is anti-Semitic, right? Like Zionism makes the claim that like it is the only form of Judaism that is valid, and that other people who claim to be Jews are not real Jews. Like I can't think of a more anti-Semitic position than that. Yeah, we oppose Zionism because it's a Western white supremacist settler colonial project. Yeah, pretty straightforward. DNA shows that more than 80% of the people now present in Israel are not Jews, and Palestinians share more than 70% of DNA with actual Jews. Yeah. A fellow with, I want to say Korean writing as a name. I don't know if it is, but it kind of has that look to it. I don't know what to call you, mate. Comes in, first comment, first time I've seen you here. We tend to support anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho-capitalism is an abject failure, also known as libertarianism, right? It's essentially let's collapse capitalism back into feudalism. That's the argument of anarcho-capitalism. It's not a serious position. It's not particularly well thought through. The people who are these anarcho-capitalists or these libertarians don't really have answers. And moreover, I think that their solutions, most of the time, are the solutions that get presented by anarcho-capitalists and by libertarians are highly experimental and not rooted in any evidence I've seen. And they use these very circuitous arguments to try to convince people. And you can convince people because people inherently do want freedom and people want to be able to do what they want to do. And so you can kind of convince people who don't know anything about the subject that these are good ideas when they are objectively terrible ideas. And it's the reason why every single time they're implemented, they have these. And like we literally are watching this happen in Argentina today. That Millie went in and enacted a bunch of anarcho-capitalist principles, and it's making 5 people, Elon Musk, very rich. But poverty has shot up at an accelerated rate. The country is falling into mass strikes. He's destroyed and dismantled a huge number of ministries in his own government, while simultaneously giving himself a raise. Like, it's Argentina. Yeah, right. Freedom for who? Freedom for who? Right? If you only care about the freedom of 5 guys to enslave the entire population, and if you don't care about the poverty, and if you don't care about the desperation, if you don't care about the destruction, if you don't care about the death, if you don't care about the fact that people are starving in the streets and are falling into massive strikes and are falling into protests, if you don't care about any of that, but what you care about is the wealth profile of 5 people, then yeah, it's freedom. Right? This is why anarcho-capitalists are fundamentally silly and not intelligent people. Right? Like, very straightforwardly, unintelligent, not well thought, selfish people. Because you only care about yourself and the wealth of people you deem to be big and powerful and important like you, and like Elon Musk. right? You don't care about the people you impoverish. You don't care about the desperation. People like Murray Rothbard argue for child slavery, right? Like, it's and the libertarian slash anarcho-capitalist minded people that are getting into power are literally doing exactly these things. They're putting children into the workforce, and they're removing regulations, so those children are getting maimed in factories and all this kind of ridiculous stuff. So, like, it's just baby-brained nonsense at this point, and it's observably baby-brained nonsense. It's so obviously rich people spreading nonsense into the society, scooping up teenagers into this idea of like, yeah, freedom in the world, yeah, because teenagers have no concept of what's going on, and then grinding them up and throwing them into these positions, and then by the time they recognize that the whole thing was a fart joke and just a total faff and total bullshit, they're too old. And they just get ground down into the system, and then they die, and then you continue the cycle. Right? And the goal is to just make sure everybody's so dim-witted that they don't understand what's going on. What do I think about the fascist and communist experiences of the last century? I mean, libertarianism in America is an extension of fascism, the without a doubt. Like, the two are cousins at the very least. And I mean, fascism was a response to the rise of workers' councils and workers' people, right, in Europe. Communism has been wildly successful for the people who have done it. Again, this is baby brain nonsense. Like, really, dude, like, it hurts me that you're in here saying these things, right? It just causes me physical pain to see somebody who's actually bought into this nonsense, especially coming from Korea, right? Especially coming from Korea. Like, you guys are getting totally destroyed by your system of capital. You guys are getting ripped apart by your system of capital. Poverty is increasing. The wealth inequality is increasing. Your work hours are increasing. Every indicator in South Korea is showing you that the system is in decay and in decline. Your birth rate is in the toilet. And your politicians are doing everything they can to make your life more difficult, and you're just like gullibly slopping it into your face. It's crazy to watch. Like, it's absolutely insane to watch the working people demand that their life be harder and then celebrate the hardship that they inflict upon themselves. It's just crazy to me to see it. Yeah, and I'm sure, yeah, fascists don't like the communist sickle and hammer, right? Fascists generally don't approve of the communist hammer and sickle. That's true, right? It's definitely the truth. It would be like saying, like, oh, Miami Cuban expats don't care for Fidel Castro. Yeah, no kidding. He took away their slave farms, right? You're part of the free youth movement in South Korea. Isn't that, like, explicitly fascist? Let's take a look. Let's learn something together. Free youth movement. Free youth movement, South Korea. Oh yeah, democratic movements in South Korea, right? CIA psyops most of the time. How South Koreans toppled a government? Sure. Like, it's just sort of odd to watch what's going on in South Korea. Like, South Korea only exists because of the invasion of the United States, the overwhelming bombardment of North Korea, the splitting of the country into two, right? No, it's from Global Taiwan, no less. Like, it's just, like, so wild. Andrew, good to see you over on Twitch. Yeah, forget it. I'm not going to bother with this shit. Like, I have no idea why people celebrate the fact that their life is harder. And that's basically every time I talk to these anarcho-capitalist libertarian guys, they're like, man, my life is harder and I make less money. but one guy has billions of dollars, and so I'm free. Like, it's just dead brain shit. Like, you are an NPC. Like, you are, like, the perfect... You're the perfect creation of capitalism. A slave that insists that you're free. And every single time your capitalist society turns on you and takes more from you, you say, "Thank you, sir, can I have another?" Like, it's just so pathetic. It's this patheticness. It's this inability to recognize you want freedom, but you've defined freedom as what the capitalists permit you to have access to. Like, it's just it's like watching a guy who lives in a prison cell say that he's free because freedom is defined as being in a prison cell. It's just crazy to watch. Like, it's just crazy to watch. So so it's small wonder that we're in the situation that we find ourselves in when we've got people who are genuinely walking around celebrating their own enslavement and calling it freedom. And looking at people who are actively stealing your wages, actively stealing your, actively driving a wedge between you and your own interests, and saying that's for my benefit. Like, it's wild to watch. I just don't know how people, like, how do people make it through the day with this? It's a wing of the People's Power Party of Korea, anti-North and conservatism. So like fascist and pro-capitalist, right? Pro-American, pro-war. Like the history of South Korea is South Korea shouldn't exist as a country. Like, it's just like a non-entity, right? Like you guys exist because America went in, bombed the shit out of Korea, caused a war, occupied it, and installed leadership there. And Korea has basically been existent in that configuration ever since. And you're basically trying to tell me, like, you're basically a pro colonizer, right? Like, you've just decided to ally yourself to the colonization project of the West, and insist that it's a good thing, even though it's objectively killing your society, right? Like, oh, well, we've got so many lights and McDonald's and shit, but the birth rate's in the toilet. Everybody's, like, they just lowered the retirement age. Everybody's working their asses off and getting poorer for it. Like, it's just wild. We want a society where everybody, but in capitalist configurations, everybody means capitalists, right? Everybody does not include the poor. Everybody does not include people who exist outside of the capitalist structure, right? Like, that's just a truism of capital. And they're doing it, like, here in North America, they're doing it by just buying up all the property, right? They just buy up all the property. We literally were reading an article that is talking very, very full-throatedly about this, where 89% of all equities are owned by institutional investors. So right off the hop, your whole idea is fraudulent and it doesn't work. Everybody should have private property. Well, that's not real. That's not a real thing that capitalism actually delivers on. It can't, it won't, and it doesn't. Straight up, full stop. Observable reality says that you're wrong. Like you're trying to tell me that a rock is actually oxygen. Like, you're fucking wrong. In big, huge scale ways. So it's just like, under capitalism, no, but of course you do. Like, of course you do. You're pro-America, so of course you do. To generate jobs and incentivize entrepreneurship. Right, what a joke. This is just basic, banal capitalist propaganda. Give all the money to the rich people, and then they'll create jobs. And that'll incentivize entrepreneurship, right? It's incentivize entrepreneurship is what they say, instead of saying you'll be so desperate that you'll do anything for food, right? You know who's heavily incentivized for entrepreneurship, right? You know who's heavily incentivized to invent things and create things in order to find a way out of their grinding poverty? People who are starving, right? They're heavily incentivized, right? They'll accept super low wages. And all of this is nakedly stated. Like, everything that I'm saying is nakedly stated by these people once you peel back the propaganda one step, right? Like, literally don't just read the newspaper, but actually go to the source. And you'll hear them say things like, it's good that people are poorer because it means they'll accept less wages and that'll make one guy rich, right? Like, you've sacrificed your entire life so that one guy can make extra money that he doesn't even notice. Like, that's what's so embarrassing about your position, is that you want to make more money for somebody who doesn't even notice he's made more money. Like, it's just so dead-brained. Like, it's just literally take your brain and turn it off. You're not using it. Like, you're not using it. Straight up. Like, I know that this is strong language, but this is where we're at now. Like, we genuinely have serious people and large sections of the society walking around espousing this objective garbage that is falsifiable on the face of it, instantaneously, visible. It's like watching somebody join a race, and then the second the gun is shot, they trip over their own feet, smash their face on the ground, shit themselves, and then insist they won the race. That's what it is to be a libertarian and to look at this, right? And then you find out that the guy that fell on his face and shit himself, well, his dad owns the organization, so he gets a gold medal anyway. And that's called freedom. Like, that's what I'm looking at with you guys. It's insanity at the highest possible level. None of your claims are true. Everything you say is false and fake. Your strategies are, at this point, to lie as aggressively as possible and spread as much misinformation and as much nonsense into the society as you possibly can to waste everybody's time while you pick their pockets. That's so obviously what's happening. And you've come into this channel expecting to have a debate with somebody who's not interested in debating a stupid moron who's too stupid to realize how stupid they are. I'm interested in having conversations with people with thoughts and that use their brains, right? But if you're coming in here and defending anarcho-capitalism and defending libertarianism, you're the stupidest person you know. And it's not close. It's not close at all. You are desperately stupid. Activate your brain cells. Start to look at these rich people who are exploiting you and start to go, maybe it's weird that I work 16 hours a day and have a room that's as big as a shoebox. Maybe it's a bit weird that the birth rate in my country is plummeting. Maybe it's a bit weird that one guy is walking away with trillions of dollars while I get nothing. Maybe it's a touch odd that military expenditure is going through the roof while social expenditure is going into the toilet. Maybe it's a bit weird and unusual and peculiar that air pollution is spiking. Maybe it's a bit weird and unusual and strange that everybody in the society hates one another and is suspicious. Maybe it's a bit strange and unusual that we have a tiny cabal of crazy people at the very top of the... Literally, South Korea had a cult leader as the president recently, right? Those are the people who are running your fucking country, and you're standing there being like, this is the best! It's so great that I'm sacrificing my life for lunatics that are trying to murder me. Use your fucking brain for 2 seconds even. These people do not care about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. 0%. That if you walked up in front of them and you said, hey, can I get enough food and shelter and like money to maybe have a decent life? They'd flush you down the fucking toilet. They don't care about you. Your whole society is based on the principles of fascism, is based on a colonial project that was created by America. Anarcho-capitalist principles are basically saying, let me cut off my arm to give it to somebody that doesn't even notice, and you're in here defending it. Shut up. Holy cow. Like, holy Christ. Your economy's the strongest in the world. How embarrassing. What a stupid thing to say. That's another thing about these anarcho-cats. They're just so dim-witted. Our economy's the strongest in the world. No, it's not. It's not. Like, it maybe if you measure your economy based on how much money some guy took so he could have Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, maybe if that's the measurement of your economy, sure. Right? Yeah, we successfully extract as much wealth as possible from the people and impoverish them as fast as possible, and we're very effective at it. Right? If you measure the success of your economy not based on the happiness, well-being, or whether or not your citizenry are actually thriving, but you measure it based on fake numbers that are in somebody's account that you've never met and never will, then yeah, you've got a great economy there. Like, it's like saying we've got the greatest economy in the world because we base our economy on how long we can torture cats. Like, look at the path of the North and see it's different. Yeah, it didn't get colonized, right? It successfully rebuilt after the massive bombing campaigns, right? Like, the bombing campaigns of the 50s and the 60s in Korea turned the place into rubble. Turned the place into total rubble. And also, I'm sorry, mate. Choice had nothing to do with it. Choice had nothing to do with it. You're talking as though Korea looked at its options and made a decision. As though South Korea looked at its options and made a decision. South Korea didn't choose anything. North Korea didn't choose anything. The Americans came in. I don't understand why war doesn't exist anymore. Right? Why war doesn't exist anymore in the minds of people. Why is there this war blindness that exists? The Americans came into Korea, bombed the shit out of it, drew a line, created South and North Korea, installed a government that was pro-Western, entrenched that government, murdered anybody who said that they wouldn't go along with it, and had those people flee. Like, you're talking about Japan and like the Japanese colony. Like, Western capital, the invasion of Korea, the Korean War. Do these things exist to you? Does the Korean War exist? Do you acknowledge the existence of war? It's wild to talk to these people, man. Stackall. Who are you talking about, Stackall? Are you talking about Trudeau? Stackall says your country is run by a dictator. He's not a dictator. Like, he's obviously just a faffy loser, right? Like he's too stupid to be a dictator, right? Like, no. Stupid's not the right word. Unprincipled. He's too unprincipled to be a dictator, right? Trudeau has no principles. Right? He's simply the face of Western capital in Canada. That's all. That Canada is a vassal of the United States, and it needs somebody in power in Canada in order to manage the populace. Right? That's basically what Trudeau is. He's there to manage the populace, and that our democratic systems exist not in order to respond to the populace, but to manage the populace, right? So he's not a dictator. I mean, capitalism is the dictator. We exist in a dictatorship of capital, right? And so what I'm concerned about, right, and I talk to people all the time, I respect why you dislike Trudeau. I don't care for Trudeau either. But what I get concerned
that people do, right, is that they focus all of their energy and all of their attention and everything they've got on this icon and this figure that has been put into a position in order to manage the populace on behalf of the real system of dictatorship, which is the system of capital. That we live under a dictatorship of capital. And the reason why I get concerned about this hyper focusing on Trudeau as a figure, is that it insists, and you see this across Canada, the Fuck Trudeau movement is very much entrenched in this mindset, that we got to get rid of Trudeau. Getting rid of Trudeau will help our country. Failing to recognize that the other parties exist specifically to work with the Liberals collectively together as the dictatorship of capital in order to maintain the system of capital. That the Conservatives, NDP, Green, Bloc, and Liberals are allies that work together under the system of the dictatorship of capital in order to maintain that system of capital. So simply standing up and shaking your fist at Trudeau isn't going to cut it. It's not actually going to cut it. That the populace needs to raise its awareness a little bit bigger, a little bit more, a little bit above Trudeau, a little bit beyond Trudeau, and see that these figures are all working together in a club. And that goal of that club is to maintain the system of capital, right? Trudeau exists as the good cop in this arrangement, right? Trudeau is the good cop. And the Conservatives, Poilievre at this point, is the bad cop, right? That the bad cop comes in, beats the shit out of the populace in order to discipline them and to make them submit to the system of capital. And then once the people get exhausted with the treatment under the Conservatives, they go back to the Liberals, who either just maintain the status quo or improve things by 0.25 over 20 years, right? So, and then say to you, see, we improved things 0.25 over 20 years. Isn't that better than what the Conservatives were doing? And most people go, yeah, I guess. Until finally they get tired of the good cop, and then they forget that about what it was to be the bad cop. And it's easy to pit people against. It's easy to pit people into parties, right? You convince people that this is politics. This is actually real politics, right? As opposed to just a theatrical performance put on for the benefit of the populace. And you continuously pass the ball between capitalists, right? Oh, yeah. Well, you're in a similar situation in America. Stackall writes, I don't need to shake my fist at Trudeau. I'm American. I'm laughing at your country right now with their support of Trudeau. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to laugh at Canada. And the reasons to laugh at Canada are very similar to the reasons why you should laugh at America. America is stuck in exactly the same position, right? The choice between Biden and Trump, like, they're allies. They work together. Like that, it's the same argument completely, right? Like to get caught up in the concept of this partisanship, like it's silly, like it's silliness at the highest possible level. Like they're allies that work together against you for the benefit of the system of capital. Something like ranked choice voting wouldn't hurt, right? But we're at the, like Stackall, we're at the point now where the system of capital will not reform itself. It's no longer responding to the needs of the public. Standing up and saying, we should do this policy. Here's a solution, right? This solution engineering or the solution-gearing that we do, right? This finding a problem and then thinking of what a solution is that we can do, right? That's nice in a functioning system, in a system that's actually responding to the populace in the first place. Our system no longer responds to us, right? The American system and the Canadian systems do not respond to the needs of the public at all. 0%, right? I shouldn't say 0%, like 0.0000001% over 10 years, right? Like, sure. That's the structure of it. That's the system of it. That's the position of it. We're not... so I used to do the same thing. Like, I was a big proponent of the basic income when Evelyn Forget sort of brought that back to life with her study. I was a big person walking around talking about the basic income, but I very steadily came to realize that they will never implement these policies, right? They will watch us die and starve in the streets homeless before they implement a policy like that. And they're already doing that. So so our energy needs to be explicitly and exclusively an overthrow of the electoral system, because it's not responding to us in the first place. It's nobody you vote for is going to respond. It is completely corrupted. The leadership of the parties admit it. Every study that's done of it shows that it's a farce and it's a failure. And so to propose solutions to problems is pointless, because those solutions will never be enacted. 0% chance. So all of our energy needs to go into creating parallel systems, abandoning the systems that exist now, not participating in the systems as they exist, and fundamentally the overthrow of the electoral system, because it is an illegitimate system. It's not responding to the people. But you won't be able to garner that support as long as people continue to support it, as long as people continue to engage in it and take it seriously, right? Like, I won't take revolution in the West seriously until the participation in the electoral system is down to maybe 5%, because there's just no reason to engage in it. Like, vote blue no matter who cares. It doesn't matter. It's not a relevant or legitimate system at all. And to pretend as though one side is better than the other at this point is just kind of an embarrassment. Yeah, all the Japanese collaborators were in the South. Yeah, of course. Japan's still occupied by the U.S. military. I think this guy already left. Like, big shocker, libertarians. They don't know anything about their own country. They don't really know anything about the subject. It's just literally, if we work hard, everything will work out. Okay, buddy. Yeah. It's not hard work. The United States set up South Korea as a bulwark against China's ascension. Yeah. Everything that South Korea has been given to them by the United States. Yeah. The United States set up Japan, Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong to contain China. How hard is this? It's the same as Israel. Israel is there as a bulwark against the Arabs. Yep. Yeah, red puppet, green puppet, orange, blue puppet, conservative, liberal, doesn't matter. They all work for capital, not you. Yep. Even once they realize all this at a higher level, some still get fooled into thinking Trump will save, or Polyev will save them from the deep state. Yeah, like... I think that the conservative right and the system of capital itself has been pretty, like, these people are clever. They're not smart, right? They're not intelligent, but they're clever, right? Like, they understand that the goal should be obfuscation and confusion, right? And a big one, and the CIA is really good at this, actually. A big one is to, when the cat's finally out of the bag, admit it, adopt it, confess to it, and then create narratives around that. So the deep state is a big one, right? That it became too obvious that the CIA is actually a heavily influential organization and the FBI is a heavily influential organization in the society. It used to be that people who stood up and talked about the CIA, you could just be like, conspiracy theory, what a kooky nut, what a conspiracy nut. And then the internet came out. And now you've literally got, like kids can literally go to the CIA website and show you the documents from the CIA at this point, right? So they had to change the narrative. This whole, oh, what a kooky conspiracy, it doesn't work anymore, right? So you've got to admit that these organizations exist. You got to admit that these organizations are. You got to admit that these organizations, and then you give them a conspiratorial name, right? The deep state. And now it's these organizations that are flooding the society with conspiracies, right? Because the goal is to get a populace distracted from the reality of what they're experiencing. And the reality of what they're experiencing is a decline of their society helmed by the capitalist death cult. That there is a death cult, capitalists, at the top of the chain of society that own everything, withhold food and shelter from you, and tell you to work for them or starve and die in homelessness, right? That's what's actually going on. But people are so distractible and easy to dangle keys in front of, and you can create all kinds of conspiracy nut shit, and people will go down all kinds of daisy chains, just so long as they don't pay any attention whatsoever to, like, the obvious thing that's actually really going on in their lives. Like, 89% of all equities are owned by institutional investors and ultra-wealthy individuals in 2024. Like, do you think that maybe that counts? Do you think maybe that matters? Like, for most people are currently living in, like, a monarchical system where they don't acknowledge the existence of the position of the king. Like, that's really what I'm looking at. I'm looking at people who don't know who the king is, who don't accept that a king exists in the first place, that the position of a monarchy or the position of a king matters or has any influence. But what really matters is going to communion. And did you hear that one of the nuns might be conversing with the devil? And like this is real politics. This is the serious thing that's going on in my community right now. Right? Is the clergyman got into a scandal and a tiff with the sheriff. And it's the sheriff that's pulling all the strings, I tell you what. And you walk into the room and you're like, you know, there's a king, right? Here, this is his name. This is what he does. This is the structure. What a kooky nut. What an idiot. Doesn't he understand that we're free? Canada is the United Kingdom state. We declared our independence. We declared our independence. Like, we're part of the Commonwealth, but we've been independent since, like, the 80s. So, you're learning a lot today, bud. Stick around. Yeah, Ayn Rand died on welfare. Yeah. And yet they still talk about her like she has credibility or is interesting. Like, this is the funniest thing. This is the funniest thing about these frauds, right? Like, this is the funniest thing. Is that they don't actually venerate intelligent people. Like, Ayn Rand literally wrote Twilight. Like, it's closer, I should say 50 Shades of Grey. Like, I read maybe half of the Fountain, or whatever the fuck her dumb book name is. I forget offhand. It's not worth the brain space to keep it in your head. I started reading it, and I literally was like, this is porn. This is straight up just like 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, big strong man. Big strong man. He's so tough and strong. That's what it is. Like, it's third-rate erotic literature written by a complete and total demented idiot. And it's obvious that that's what it is. And United States congressmen and senators are walking around holding this book up as if it has any virtue, and it's literally something for, like, Midwestern housewives to masturbate to. It's literally what it is. Like, Ayn Rand wrote that shit so she could jerk off at night. That's what it is. And, like, it doesn't contain any economic enlightenment. It doesn't contain any observation of human nature. It doesn't contain anything interesting. It literally is big, strong men are hunky and hot, and we should just submit ourselves to them. Like, that's straight up. That's straight up what Ayn Rand is all about. And it works. It totally works. Like, people can get swept up in that shit for sure. Right? She did. And then she died on welfare. Your great, powerful capitalist, where was he? He didn't come along to save you? So capitalism propped up. Oh, we got a dimwit in the chat here. Okay. NOK life. So, hold on. Again, we're just looking at war blindness. Like, they go into countries, destroy them, and steal their resources, my man. Like, I don't understand why this is just blind to you. Why you've just put on blinders and you've just decided to ignore the existence of war. This is becoming a real phenomenon. This is becoming something that I'm really, like, at first I was looking at it from a Marxist perspective, because a lot of people who critique China ignore war, right? There's just a war blindness. But I'm really beginning to see that it extends into the wider public. And I'm really starting to wonder why people have this war blindness, where war doesn't matter, where war doesn't exist. Yeah, and I think it's just because you benefit from the plunder. That's it, right? So to point out that America is a warlike people who cause death and devastation wherever they go, right? In general, the long-term capitalism keeps more poor than rich, and it will continue that way? Yeah, I agree. So I don't really understand what your position is, my man. Like, I don't really get what it is you're saying, right? Do you get what it is you're saying? Because, like, capitalism keeps people poor. That's the point. That's how the capitalists benefit, by extracting wealth from the poor, by invading countries, destroying them, creating colonies, and creating systems that continue to extract wealth. This is what Europe and America have been doing for their entire existence. Like, literally for their entire existence. That's their whole strategy. Like, the British tried to do it with America. They tried to turn America into a colony so that they could extract wealth and grow their own empire, and it failed. It backfired, right? Their colony grew more powerful than them, and they were able to declare their independence and defend themselves from their colonizers previously, and then they became the colonizers. And they did it while, of course, eradicating the First Nations people and enslaving the African continent, right? So so I don't really get why there's any defense of capitalism being put on the table at all. Yeah, Trump is better than Biden, not really. Like, they're just different. Like, do you want your arsenic flavored raspberry, or do you want it flavored like banana? Right? So at this point, it's just like your preference. That's all. That some people look at Joe Biden and they see like Uncle Grandpa Joe, who's just like, you know, we're going out there into the rest of the world, into, because the greatest country in America is America, and the best. We're doing. We got some ice cream. Oh, okay. Like, some people look at that and they're like, well, that's homespun. Like, sure, he's an old guy, but like, whatever, right? And then some people look at that and are like, that guy's demented, obviously. And then they turn and they look at Trump and they see a guy who's like, you know, the best thing going on in the world today is beautiful women, right? And people go like, yeah. And they just like go to that. So it's just like, what flavor do you want? That's all. So it's just personal preference at this point. In terms of policy, they're identical. Guys, I gotta read this out loud. It's so dumb. The only reason capitalism starts wars is because of state and protection shit. We don't have that in anarcho-capitalism. Merely wish to shut down the central bank so people can have more place to choose the currency they want to trade. So stupid. Like, observably dumb. Literally in a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of level. Like kindergarten shit. Like, for real. The only reason capitalism starts wars is because state and protection shit. Embarrassing. Embarrassing at the highest possible level. Capitalism seeks permanent expansion into territories to extract wealth. They invade nations for wealth, to steal wealth. It's so obvious that that's the case. Plain as the nose on your face. 1 + 1 = 2. America invades for wealth. They invaded Iraq to steal the oil. Right? They invade countries to destroy opposition. They're state and protection. What are you talking about? America's surrounded by 2 oceans. Who threatens America? What threat could anybody? What threat could literally anybody have to America? What are you talking about? It's just embarrassing. Dude, please stop saying such stupid things. Stack all. I critique China because of how horribly they treat their citizens. Okay. Bad start. How horribly they treat their citizens with their rising wages and rising standard of living and 800 million people being lifted out of poverty and the massive infrastructure projects and the increase of public health care over the years and the increase of public education, right? So really terrible start. Social credit. With things like social credit. Yeah, you have a credit score, right? Right? You have a credit score, right? Well, so does China. Like, if somebody commits fraud, well, we should write that down and make it difficult for them to do that again. Right? So it's a similar system. And so the idea that, like, we're aghast by a social credit system when we have a social credit system, it's called a credit score, we have it, it's sort of weird. Kind of an odd position. China has stolen things with cheap labor. Like a fundamental misunderstanding of Dangism. Like, I don't even understand this death vans. Like, it just sounds like some kooky Falun Gong shit. You probably jerk off to videos on the internet for people whose whole existence is to make China look like a great place to live. Do you understand how easy it is to show how nice China actually is? Like, do you understand how simple it actually is? You can literally just walk around a city in China. Like that's I haven't done this in a long time, actually. Hey, 24 viewers. That's nice. I'm glad you guys are here. Good opportunity. Walk around video. Walk around. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles. Please consider donating to my Patreon. But most importantly to any of that, let's just go to Shanghai, dude. Let's just do it. Tell people I exist. More importantly than anything else, tell people I exist. Like, my man, my brother in Christ. Like, so look, Stackall, I see this a lot in Western countries, okay? People in Western society project onto China, right? People in Western countries, because you live in a country that does not respond to your needs, because you have governments that do not care what you think and do not listen to what you have to say, you simply assume that the same thing is going on elsewhere. And you take the media that gets delivered to you by the very people who are abandoning you, and for some reason you take it at face value. When what's actually going on in China is a rapid development, a rapid building of prosperity. China doesn't listen to what their citizens say. If you speak your mind, they arrest you. Objectively and observably false. First of all, if you speak your mind, they arrest you. Source required. Unless you mean speak your mind means we should coup the government, right? Like, oh, we should work with the CIA in order to coup the government. Freedom of speech. Just this kind of embarrassing thing to say. There were protests in China. There are protests in China. Like, I don't know what to tell you, bud. Like, the lockdowns in China were lifted because the citizens of China started to protest them. And so the government said, oh, okay, we'll lift the lockdowns because people are starting to protest this. Why? They listened to their people. Harvard did a study. Okay, bud, this is like how observably wrong you are about this. Okay? Like, I really need you to understand this. That you are talking from a position of ignorance. You are speaking from a position of ignorance. It might just be faster for me to type it in. Harvard study China approval ratings. Yeah. So this is from Harvard, right? Hardcore leftist organization, Harvard. This is the Harvard Gazette, taking China's pulse. This is a 20-year study that they did of popular opinion in China. Sorry, the better part of 15 years. Little over 15 years. Yeah. The survey team found that compared to public opinion patterns in the United States and China, there was a very high satisfaction with the central government. In 2016, the last year the survey was conducted, 95.5% of respondents were either relatively satisfied or highly satisfied with Beijing. In contrast to these findings, Gallup reported in January of this year that their latest polling on U.S. citizen satisfaction with the American federal government revealed only 38% of the respondents were satisfied with the federal government. So to say that the government of China is not listening and not responding to its citizens is objectively false at the highest possible level. You're just wrong. Like, you're just dead wrong. And so you can accept, okay, these claims, Stackall says, I wonder what happened to the ones that said they were dissatisfied. You need to provide evidence for your claims. Because you sound like a lunatic. You sound like a crazy person saying that kind of stuff. Like, imagine being a Chinese citizen and listening to you say that kind of thing. What do you think that makes the rest of the world think about our country? When you say that kind of lunatic shit about a place you know nothing about. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful, and you should be ashamed of saying that kind of thing. Of accusing another country of rounding up its own citizens and shooting them. What a disgraceful thing to say when you have no evidence to support it. It's literally just something you say because you sound like a bigot. Like, you sound like a bigot. So stop. Base what you say on evidence that you can see with your eyes. Like, the rest of the world is turning on us. It's right to turn on us. It's correct that the rest of the world is turning against us. Because we refuse to look and see them as our peers. But the people support the government. And you don't have any evidence. So you're not critiquing anything. You're just spreading your xenophobic bigotry into the airwaves and expecting people to be like, yeah, that's right. Uh-huh. Well, too bad. You're encountering somebody who sees China as a good place trying to do good for its own citizens. And why do I think that? Because I have eyes and I accept evidence and I don't base what I think on xenophobic bigotry. I don't listen to Radio Free Asia, and I don't listen to the fucking Wall Street Journal's opinion. Unless it's to point out how fucking xenophobic and creepy and weird they are. The people of China support their government. And so to stand up and try to hold up this shield that says, I'm criticizing the government, no, you're not. No, you're not. The people of China support their government, and all of the evidence we have shows them. And you saying, well, what did they do to the ones that stood with no evidence, with no backing, you don't have a leg to stand on, is just xenophobic bigotry. Quit it. You're not going to last much longer in here with that attitude. Like, yeah, this I admire that this South Korean fellow is sticking it out here for some reason, but yeah, Hitler was very warlike. Hitler was a capitalist, right? Like, fascism is a subgroup of capitalism. Like, I don't really get why anybody supports capitalism anymore. Like, it seems really weird to me. And to point out that a capitalist was very warlike, it's like, yeah, they all are. I've listened to information from people that have lived for over a decade, have firsthand experience. Right, so you've like, if the only information I had about Cuba were the people that the Cuban communists expelled, and I didn't actually dig into their past or attempt to understand anything about the nature of the relationship that they had with that country, then I would be like, yeah, Fidel Castro, he came in and took everybody's property away and caused problems for everybody and threw a bunch of people out. It was a real catastrophe for those people. Yeah. You dig in a little deeper, you find out, oh, those guys were slave owners. Oh. Like, there are literal, like, racial purity cults here in Canada. The big one is Falun Gong, right? So Falun Gong was a racial purity cult that showed up in the 80s, in the late 90s in China. If you're familiar with Shen Yun, right? So I like to spread this around as much as I can. If you see this anywhere, right? If you see this anywhere, right? China before communism, right? So this Shen Yun stuff, you'll see posters about. I still see posters of it everywhere in this city. They're big in New York as well. Shen Yun, they're owned by a racial purity cult called Falun Gong, right? And of course they won't point this out. They won't ever say, like, yes, I'm part of a racial purity cult. Here's their symbol, right? Like, that's their symbol. Is it showing up? Yeah, there you go. That's their symbol, right? So, like, these people exist in our society. They get thrown out of China for the obvious reasons that they're a racial purity cult attempting to revert China back to before it was Chinese, or before it was communist, rather, right? China before communism. It was such a better place being ruled by monarchic imperialists, right? And of course they present a narrative that is so phony and so fake and so ridiculous that the only people who would believe it are people who don't know anything. So be very suspicious and be very careful of just, like, random stories you heard on the street. I knew a guy that lived there for decades and all he wanted to do was rape children. Like, we have every reason to be suspicious of people who are speaking out against organizations in countries that they no longer live in. Right? Like, the fact that they don't live in that country anymore should be a clue. Right? It should be a clue to you that, like, interesting. The country of their origin was like, no thanks, get the fuck out of here. It's like trying to defend the Puritans, you know? They get completely thrown out of Europe and they come here and cause problems over here with their puritanical bullshit. And everybody's just like, well, they must have been great. They got thrown out of their country of origin. They must have been completely wonderful. So, this is the long-form way of me saying, yes, I'm going to trust educational organizations that are rooted in the idea of proliferating facts that can be peer-reviewed by other educational organizations and institutions in order to build their credibility and maintain their credibility, I'm going to go with that over a couple of people saying, trust me, bro. Seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, the idea that the United States has free speech is sort of a joke at this point. Well, no, it's selective though, right? The quote unquote free speech just means being able to say the N-word. That's all. Like, that's what people in America are saying when they say they want to have free speech. They want to be able to say the N-word. And it doesn't go too much deeper than that. Right? And so and of course people who stand up and effectively say, hey, no, we probably shouldn't allow people to terrorize racial groups verbally, right? Well, those people suddenly disappear from platforms, right? There's all kinds of evidence to show that, like, Elon Musk is like the great hypocrite in all of this, right? Like, he can stand up and proliferate all kinds of racist shit into the society and claim free speech. But if somebody stands up and says maybe that's bad, out, downvote, banned, cleared out. So this concept that there's free speech in America, I've never seen it. Like, unless you mean the freedom to say the N-word, and there's plenty of that. Should a walk around in Buenos Aires, Argentina? You know what, man? Argentina's a beautiful country. Buenos Aires, Argentina. Let's go. Buenos Aires travel guide. I should, oops. What the heck just happened? Go away. That was weird. Argentina, walk around. That's what we want. A virtual walking tour of Buenos Aires. You got it, my man. Buenos Aires is pretty, Argentina is going to be a pretty, comparatively a poorer place. Like, you're going to see, like, buildings, obviously. Yeah. Torn flag. I think that the best thing to do, and I really do recommend this, and it's why I don't shy from it, right? Is to get your feet on the ground in a place, find a video of somebody who's actually like going around and showing you pictures, right, of a place, and showing you what it is like on the street level in a place. I think that's a really, really good idea and a really, really good concept. Yeah, like, so you see infrastructure from the 50s and the 60s, basically. Stuff that's, normal, regular, kind of run down, right? Pretty standard fare, basic, normal city that exists all across North and South America. Like, this is like an old architectural style. This guy's kind of doing, like, quick cuts and things like this. But, like, I would call this standard fare. And the thing about, like, the major difference that I immediately notice between this and China, and that's worth pointing out, is that all of that infrastructure that exists in China didn't exist there 50 years ago, right? Like, they've built all of that within the last 50 years. Whereas this infrastructure was built, like, in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and it's kind of just here, and they're sort of just maintaining it. And there's been no new developments, and there's been no new kind of anything. So it's just like a culture and a society that's in, a kind of a normal state. It is nice to walk around, though. It's good that he's getting into, like, their parliament building and seeing all this kind of stuff. This building here looks very similar to the one in Winnipeg, for example. And one of the big reasons why I love these walking tours and like when I'm seeing this city, it feels like I'm looking at Winnipeg. That's what it feels like I'm looking at. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Not from there, but I lived there for quite some time. And I'm from Manitoba. And this looks almost identical, actually, to Manitoba. To Winnipeg, rather. If somebody told me that this is footage from Winnipeg, I would initially believe them. I'd initially be like, oh yeah, okay. And then I'd very steadily be like, I haven't seen that. This is a different place. And of course the language on the signs, right? Big tell. But but what that tells me, and what I like doing this for more than anything else, is to realize how similar we all actually are, right? That a big thing that we're all fighting as people, and it's really clear that we're all fighting it, and it's really clear that it's entrenched and it's deep inside of us, and we don't often confront it, right? Is that we are bent towards xenophobia. We are bent towards bigotry. We are bent towards being suspicious of things we don't know or things we don't understand. And when we create an image of what that people are or what they look like, we can create fake images pretty easily, right? It's pretty easy for us to present in our mind's eye the most xenophobic version of what those people look like. And then when you actually go and you look, they look like us. Like, they look like us. If somebody told me that this city was in Canada, I would believe them. Right? I wouldn't be shocked or surprised at all by that. So, like, look how similar we actually all are. The fellow from South Korea, Chinese cities are just random samey buildings. Just objectively false, dude. Like, really. Like, objectively false. You can't see history, culture. Of course you can. You just need to go to the cities that where they've purposefully maintained that kind of stuff. And like, if you go to just Shanghai, obviously not, because Shanghai is a different sort of story there. But each Chinese city is certainly unique. Like, it's just sort of embarrassing to say, my man. Well, Andrew, I would extend that. Andrew writes, in the U.S. you can criticize the government, but that doesn't mean there is freedom of speech. Major channels are blocked with different opinion. Social networks block inconvenient people. There's definitely truth to what you're saying there, but it also extends further than that, which is to say that the American concept of free speech is like, you can criticize the government. It's like, yeah, you can criticize the government. That's what the government is there to do. The government is there to take the ire of the culture, so long as it leaves the capitalists alone, right? Criticizing the capitalists is not permitted. Going after capitalism, going after the actual system of control is not permitted. And those are the people who are sidelined, and those are the people who are ignored. The people who are willing to confront the system of capital. So you can trick yourself into believing you live in a free speech country because you can shit on the Republicans all you want, failing to recognize that, like, that's the reason they exist. So long as you vote blue, no matter who, right? Yeah, fun fact, Millie wants to strengthen the Argentine military. Yeah, how very anarchist of him, yeah. Yeah, real China understander has chimed in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, China doesn't allow Western misinfo services to lie to their citizens. Yeah, exactly. With a little crying meme. I know. Is RT blocked in Canada? I mean, effectively, we piggyback most American policies. We are vassals. We're a vassal state of the United States. We have a deal that we signed years ago called NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which essentially makes it so that if America says do something, we say yes. There are very rare... There are exceptions to this, but they are mainly like, if you... For example, the Canada Broadcasting Act means that if you want to broadcast a channel into Canada, a certain percentage of that, of your material needs to be Canadian content, right? So that's like one of the things that we insist. And we said that of YouTube, for example, and it caused a big firestorm. Censorship bill, oh my God. When literally all it did is it put like a little bar in your YouTube feed that was like Canada. It's just Canadian content. It was like the most banal shit of life. And yeah, like RT is available on Rumble. Like, so people will take RT stuff and put it on Rumble. So it's technically not RT. It's like, and like, nobody's going to go chasing after some one guy off in the corner who has like 5,000 subscribers, maybe. So it's just like, this is a really nice city, though, isn't it? Historical. This place feels historical, right? This place feels very like we're proud of our history. We've got a heritage, but but it looks run down. That's the truth of it. Like it does. Like it looks like it hasn't really gotten any investment in it for a long, long, long time. Although it looks like people seem like they're living a life and doing all they can do, right? You and Me asks, what's my opinion on China's method of dealing with the Islamist extremists in Xinjiang? I think that they've done the best job that they could possibly do, right? That they've done the best job that they could possibly do. I actually think it's a shame that they kind of stopped doing what they were doing because of the international pressure that they were experiencing. There's a historical city in China. I forget the name of it offhand that I really want to go through. Yeah, let's go through a less glitzy part of China. Let's go through the historic district in Chengdu. That sounds lovely. Well, I think that this speaks to sort of a larger issue, you and me, and it's something I've been pointing out a lot recently, and I think I'm going to continue really hammering on it because it seems to be ubiquitous. I started really noticing it. Jian. You got it. You got it, XD. Let's go. Jian. Absolutely, dude. We're going to do that. Jian City. Let's go. Let's go. Here we go. This is like the real stuff. This isn't like the nature walk shit. This is literally like straight up dudes. Historical reenactment. So a touch inauthentic, like a touch, but like that's fine. Not everything needs to be 100%. I really noticed within Western Marxist circles a war blindness, especially when they would critique China, but not only. Like, when they get talking about the Soviet Union, there is this, it exists as well. And I've seen it over and over again, where people are making like really good arguments and are really astute observations and are doing like lots of good research. I really noticed this with, there's a really good Marxist. I really like him. Like, I'm not trying to shit on this guy. Fellow Traveler. He did a really great video on China and the history of Dangism. And he was like, here's some documents. Here's their history. This is the arguments they use. This is all. And he really broke it down. It was very educational. It was very informative. And the entire time that he was talking, I was like, okay, cool. He's really setting the stage and like talking all this stuff. When's he going to talk about the war? When's he going to talk about the Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Korean wars that happened on the border of China and that 100% influenced Chinese policy? When is he going to start talking about China's bearing witness to World War II and them watching the Nazis rise up and invade the Soviets and murder 25 million Soviets? When is he going to talk about the nuclear bombardment of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which you could probably have seen if you stood on the coast of China and looked over at Japan? Like, when is he going to talk about war and how war influences policy and how war matters to how people think and discuss moving forward as a people peacefully? When's he going to do it? And he didn't. He, at the very end, he like just kind of glinted at World War II. He kind of glinted at it. But like, so you did this huge write-up, this huge analysis, This massive investigation, and you just eliminated war. War doesn't matter to you and your connection to all of this. I think that is a huge, massive, enormous oversight of a monumental level. One that makes it very difficult for me to take people seriously. Like, I like these guys. I like what they're doing, and I like what they're putting out there. But this war blindness, boy, is it dry. Like, it's putting them down rabbit holes, and it's making them avoid realities that are right there. That are right fucking there. Like, the number one goal of any people, of any society, of any culture, anywhere, at any time, is to avoid total war. If you have an ideology or a concept or a policy that's leading you down a path and the result is total war, then you're a failure. That is unintelligent and you should not do it. But if you are following an ideology and a path and then it intersects with the possibility of total war and you go, okay, we're going to squirt and we're going to go in a different direction to avoid total war, then you're intelligent. And you're using your brain and you're rational. Because the number one goal of any civilization should be to avoid total war. And you should do it at almost any cost. Right? The only cost that you should not bear is an outcome that would be the equivalent of going through a total war. So if laying down your arms and capitulating means that they come in and carpet bomb you, well, then you shouldn't do it, obviously. You should fight. But if you can say to your aggressors, hey, let's stop the war, and we'll let some businesses in, and we'll make some money for you guys, and we'll let people work for you for cheaper than they could work over in America, right? Cool. It means that your cities don't get carpet bombed. It means that tens of millions of people don't die, right? Cool. Good choice. Well done. Intelligent. Smart. Super intelligent. Super prescient. Visionary even. Given the dim-wittedness of humanity through history. Right? Very clear that what the Dangists did is they looked at Marxism. They looked at what America was and what it could do and what it would do. And they said, using Marxism and the ideas of Marxism, we're going to avoid total war and we're going to go down an economic path. And we're going to fight on the economic battlefield. And we're going to win on the economic battlefield. And that's 100% what they've done. And now, by increasing the prosperity of China and by moving it up on the chain, they have built their military strength to actually be able to withstand a full frontal assault from the Americans. So that the Americans can't actually get into China and actually invade them like they could in the past. And so now China can actually begin expanding its vision of its own country through the lens of Marxism. And it can begin expanding that. And it is. And it has been. And so to pivot this all into what we were originally talking about, which was the Uyghur genocide narrative, right? So, like, where do you think these Uyghurs come from? Like, what do you think is happening? Where do you think a lot of these, not specifically the Uyghurs, but where do you think a lot of these like terrorist groups come from? They come from Afghanistan. They went through the Wakhan corridor. There was a 20-year war in the bordering country. Afghanistan borders China, borders the Xinjiang region. So America went into Afghanistan for 20 years, bombed the shit out of it, stole their resources, grew a bunch of heroin, sent it back over, created fentanyl. And this created, like, if you were born in 2002, all you ever have known in Afghanistan up until literally last year was war. It's all you've ever known. And so you've got people fleeing Afghanistan and fleeing into the hills of the Xinjiang region in China. And then they get rounded up into the East Turkmetic independence movement. And you literally, we've interviewed some of these guys, and these guys are literally like, I'm going to go into China to murder people for the glory of Allah. Straight up what they're saying. Like, straight up. And they believe it. That's a serious problem. Like, it's a serious and very real thing that is definitely happening. And the solution that the Chinese came up with was, we got to get these guys rehabilitated, man. Like, we got to get them into a place where they can learn some skills, where they can be protected from these religious extremists and these fanatics, where they can learn Chinese, learn a language, where they can become economically integrated into China, right? Because the alternative solution is to leave them in the hills of Xinjiang, where they constantly come down and raid China for the glory of Allah, or to just bomb the shit out of them, which is the American solution. So the Chinese, faced with the option of perpetual endless war and raiding, or spending some resources in order to rehabilitate people and integrate them back into the Chinese society, or into the Chinese society, chose to integrate them. And what happened? The Americans floated a satellite over the center where this was happening, took a picture, put spooky music over it, and went, "There's a genocide happening! A Uyghur genocide!" And my absolute favorite part about this whole, "there's a Uyghur genocide, seriously," right? Well, my favorite part is pointing out how stupid you have to be to believe that the Americans care about Muslims at all, right? America has literally been bombing and destroying Muslim nations for like 50 years plus. Like, literally committing a mass genocide, enormous projects of coups and destruction all across the Muslim world. But they really care about the Muslims in China, guys. They really, really care about the Muslims in China, for sure. Won't someone please think about the Uyghurs in China? Don't pay any attention to those. Those were Yemenis. They're a different type of Muslim. It's fine. Right? Like, what are we, stupid? The answer is obviously yes. And but my other favorite thing that happened about this whole Uyghur genocide thing is that the BBC sent a film crew. They sent a film crew into one of these facilities. They sent a film crew into one of these facilities. And the whole time, of course, the way the BBC reported on it was like, what a dark and sinister, just a dangerous place. And they, you know what evidence they caught? Nothing. And moreover, they caught evidence because their whole pitch is that this is actually a prison. These people are here actually against their will, actually. This is actually a concentration camp, actually. We're definitely trying to convince people this is actually a concentration camp, actually, the entire time. That all of these people are just paid actors, and they're just paid here to do this. So you know what the BBC did? In a moment of actual journalism, right? That really shows that these propagandists actually deep down do think that they're journalists, right? Deep down, these propagandists actually believe that they're doing a public service, right? What did they do? They set a camera up outside of the facility. And you know what they captured? They captured the Chinese officials who were running the facility at the end of the day, letting people, students, prisoners, out into the streets. That the men lined up at the gate. A bus came along, picked the men up, right, at the gate. The bus went to another place, and then all of the men that got let out of the bus walked out into the streets of China. Prison system. Genocide. For sure, 100%. That looks exactly like a genocide to me. Letting students walk freely in the streets of my city. Genocide. Like, this is what they're showing us while trying to convince us that it's a genocide. Like, do you have any idea how easy it is to show that a genocide is happening? Like, this is my big go-to when it comes to getting into the conversation of genocide. Okay, this is my big go-to. There's no such thing as a secret genocide. It doesn't exist. It's not possible. The people who are on the ground enacting the genocide, who must number in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, because of the scale of what a genocide is, must collaborate and communicate with one another about it, and they have to do so openly. It's not possible to organize a genocide any other way. You have to openly discuss it. You need speeches. You need organizational structures. When Adolf Hitler committed the Holocaust, he talked about it. There were speeches. They voted on it in parliament. When Netanyahu commits the genocide in Gaza, he's open about it. They talk about it. They voted on it in their parliament. When the Canadians did the residential school system, they talked about it. They voted on it in parliament. When the Americans committed the genocide against the First Nations people, they talked about it. When the Spaniards committed the genocide against the Aztecs and the Incans and the Mayans, they talked about it. They voted on it. They discussed it. They planned it. They organized it. They executed it. We have the documents. It's impossible to commit a genocide in secret because of the size and the scale of it. So, show me one Chinese official anywhere talking about committing a genocide against the Uyghur people. Show me any bureaucrat at any level. Show me a prison guard. Show me anyone. Show me any document. Show me any conversation. Show me any vote. Show me any communication that says we are trying to commit a genocide against the Uyghur people. Anywhere. Across all of China. 1.4 billion people, no one's talking about committing a genocide against the Uyghur people. So you have no evidence. Why? Because you can't plan a genocide in secret. It's not possible. It's simply not possible. It's like you're trying to tell me my plan is to drive across Canada without a vehicle. Well, then you're not driving, are you? Like, you're walking. No, I'm driving, but you don't have a vehicle. Correct. Got it. And then moreover, okay? And then moreover, right? And then moreover, where's the opposition movement? Like this is the other big one, right? When cultures commit a genocide against another culture, the country that is experiencing the genocide often creates resistance movements and often creates organizations that stand in resistance. Where are they? Where are the Uyghurs across the Xinjiang province? Where are they? Where is a single official in the Xinjiang province talking about it? Where is anybody discussing it? Doesn't exist. What we end up with is a bunch of CIA spooks and people who have obviously been paid off. But when we send film crews into the region, we don't capture anything. There's no mass graves anywhere. Like, the claim is 8 million people. Where are they? We've got satellites in the sky that can read street signs, but we can't find a massacre of 8 million people? Just seems pretty unlikely. You and Me continues, to be honest, they should let more Islamists into America and Canada to give the populace a bit of shock therapy so they can better understand the problem. I mean, it's not that much different than what you're seeing with the religious fundamentalists in Christianity in America. It's the same kind of thing, right? Like, Jesus Christ is coming back any moment. When he comes back, he's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. I tell you what, the believers are going to go up into heaven and live with Jesus Christ, and the people who stand against him, they're going to get thrown into a pit of unholy fire and live there eternally. Like, it's the same kind of thing, right? Like, it's the same idea. It's just one group is living in desperate poverty, and the other group is living in privilege and living in the lap of luxury. Right? So it's if you took those same Christian fundamentalists and threw them into poverty and said, you have nothing, you're going to grind away, and we're going to drop bombs on you every so often, right? You would find out very quickly that they're the same, and they would act in the same way, and they would have the same response. Because it's the same thing, right? That people inherently attempt to make sense of the world. They want stories to try to make sense of the reality that they live in. Humans are dissatisfied with simply just saying, like, I don't know. They want some kind of first principle that they operate from, and so most cultures create doctrines and dogmas and stories in order to try to make sense of the world that they live in. And when those groups are threatened with the eradication of that culture, because that's what they've built is a culture, then they get very hyper-protectionist of it. And I think that really what's driving the fundamentalism in our societies today is the internet. I think that the internet has opened things up in a way that we have never seen before, so that everybody can look at all of these different cultures and all of these different things. And what it has done is it has threatened those cultures, right? That those cultures, they don't want to be observed and analyzed. They don't want people from the outside looking in and criticizing them. They just want to exist in their bubble, in their community, in their culture. And if you're going to be looking at their culture, they want you to be joining into the culture, right? They don't want this bird's eye view staring down at them, being like, well, that's a kooky, funny thing that you're saying there. They don't want to try to justify what it is they're doing in an intellectual kind of way, right? They don't want to have to come to terms with some of the kookiness that they've got. They don't want to do any of that. And so most of these organizations and most cultures, and especially with the spread of war as well, it doesn't help. Most people fall into fundamentalism and fall into this fundamentalist idea, which is that this doctrine and this book and this thing that I'm holding is the most important thing, and I will not stand for you going after it. That this is real and it matters, right? And of course, this leads you down a rabbit hole of defending the existence of magic, of defending very kooky positions, but it's because you're in a position of tightness and you're in a protectionist position. This matters. I will not have you discard it. And I'm going to constantly try to fit it into places to prove its legitimacy and show that how it's legitimate. When the truth is that this is all just kind of made up stuff that's coming out of humanity in order to discuss larger ideas and larger thoughts. And that's enough. That's fine. Right? We're not going to discard it and put it in the dustbin. Right? Like it's like things will fade away, obviously, as they do. But like everyone's in such a hyper heightened state of hysteria right now. Like we're a culture that's obviously in a mass hysteria. Like it's very obvious we're in a mass hysteria. And that mass hysteria encourages fundamentalism. It encourages people to be more fundamentalist in their worldview. And you can have secular fundamentalists, and you can have atheist fundamentalists, and you can have Islamic fundamentalists and Christian fundamentalists. I think it's all kind of the same thing, which is we have found the one truth, and we will not allow you to denigrate the one truth. Whereas my position is, well, okay, you've got a culture and you've got a history and you've got a thing that you're saying about your pursuit towards the one truth. But obviously your book is not the one truth. Like, I just don't think humanity will ever capture that. And the idea that a bunch of nomads did, or that people did in, like, the oppressive Roman Empire did, it's pretty unlikely. It seems unlikely that that's the case, right? That isn't to say they didn't say interesting things and they didn't have powerful things to say about the nature of humanity and the nature of our existence and the nature of our communication with the universe and all of that. That's not to say that. But it is just to kind of point out that, yeah, you know what? Magic probably isn't real. You know these stories about a guy dying and coming back to life and, like, turning water into wine and, like, doing magic? Probably not. Right? Probably meant to... I actually have come to believe that the reason why these storytellers put magic in their moral storytelling lessons is because morality also exists in the abstract, and that a very quick and easy and efficient way to get a person into the abstract space is to tell a story with magic in it. Start telling a story with magic in it, and suddenly a person's in the abstract space, and they're just there. And then once they're in the abstract space, then you can start talking about morality, which is an abstraction, right? That it exists in abstraction. And then you can hopefully, once they hear the story and they come out of the abstract space, they'll be better off for having done it. And the fastest way to get them into the abstract space, so he threw a fireball. Oh. And then Jesus turned water into wine. Wow, can you imagine? Can you imagine? Right? So you get them excited and in an imaginative space. And then once they're in the imaginative space, and that's why it's good to help the poor. Oh. Right? DM writes, Uyghur genocide was simply a manufactured fake news by Western military industrial fascist complex in order to keep CIA capitalists happy. Yes. Yes. You included a lot in there, but you did it. I mean, I think the goal is obviously to turn a large enough section of the populace against China. And of course, Americans are completely blind to their own history, are largely illiterate. And so, like, just saying, like, Uyghur genocide, a bunch of people just be like, "Rah, war," right? Because what they really want is just war, right? They don't really care about the justification for it. You and Me continues, I don't know, the Christian fundies seem to be R-worded. Yeah, they're usually poor losers living in backwater, with the exception of Mormons. No, I think there's plenty of wealthy people. Like, very famously, Ronald Reagan was an evangelical Christian and a true believer. We've got, like, hard evidence that shows that Ronald Reagan would get into conversations with world leaders, and the world leaders would walk out being like, this guy's fucking nuts. Because he was talking this, like, fundamentalist Christian shit. We've got plenty of evidence to show that lots of United States senators and congressmen are true believers, right? Like Mitt Romney has gone on talk radio and had very, very wide open conversations about his Mormonism. And no, and a lot of these wealthy guys, like, Christianity is part of it. So I don't think it does come down to wealth. I do think that Christian fundamentalists are widely hypocritical. Like, I don't think that they love, like, they say they love Jesus, but they despise him, and it's obvious. They don't listen to anything he has to say. They don't care about him at all. That if Jesus was to show up in front of them and say the things that Jesus said, they would do everything they could to kill this guy. Like, they hate Jesus, for sure. Christian fundamentalists hate Christ more than anybody, I think. Like I think that the Muslims love Jesus more than the Christians do, widely. I don't think it's really close. Um, but insofar as their like fundamentalist belief structure, yeah, no, I think rich people across America, because they're hypocrites and they don't actually listen to anything Christ has to say, they just like that they're in a club, right? Are you familiar with elite theory and Gaetano No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Mosca said, intrigue may be enough to produce the counterfeit semblance of personal merit. Intrigue may be enough to produce the counterfeit semblance of personal merit. Dude, I gotta tell you, like, this individualist shit is so, like, look, everybody's trying their best, and everybody's pursuing the opportunities that exist in front of them, right? And you can open yourself up, and you like I've got a real problem with a lot of the modern day spirituality that I'm seeing in the world today. A lot of the modern day spirituality is basically just a way to funnel people back into the idea that you can do it. Just keep doing it. You can do it. Just continue committing to the system of capital. Don't stand up against the system of capital. It's not a collective issue, right? Jib Jabby, you have a good move, my man. You have a good move. I always appreciate that you pop in and say hello, Jib Jabby. I gotta let you know. Like, it's kind of, there's something nice about it. I gotta tell you. There's something nice that you know you're not going to be able to stick around. You know you're not going to be able to participate in the chat. But you still want to pop in and let me know that you're going to watch my vids. Like, that's nice, my man. There's something really nice about that. I feel like you should know that I really do appreciate when you pop in. So I hope your move goes really, really well, my man. And I'll miss you. I'll be looking for you. Hope it goes well. Yeah, Xinjiang is actually multicultural, not just Uyghurs and Han Chinese, but they want their Salafist Uyghur ethno-state. Yeah, you're talking about the Islamic, the East. Oh, I always forget their names, and then I gotta look at the anagram in my head. East Islamic. Nope. Why am I East Turkestan Independence Movement? That's what it is. I'm glad, Jib Jabby. You have a good move, my man. It's all the same problem with monotheism of the day. Monism, money, monotheism, monotony, monster. The one true. Okay, you know what I want to do? We've been doing this for a while. I've got articles. I've got articles. Oh, that's kind of you to say, Jib Jabby. I don't know about brave, but I'll take it. Thank you. You know, I do have two hearts, Jib Jabby. I do. Just like the Klingons. The second one is just in case the first one gets wounded in honorable combat. So, from Reuters, Israel will defend itself, Netanyahu says, as West calls for restraint. Israel will make its own decisions about how to defend itself, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday, as Western countries pleaded for restraint in responding to a volley of attacks from Iran. Defund them. Like, it's so childish at this point. Like, it's so obvious. Like when America was created initially as a British colony, right? And then the British colony got so powerful that it was able to throw off the original colonizer, and it became its own independent thing. It kind of looks like the same thing is kind of happening in Israel, where Israel is like becoming its own independent thing. But the difference is that like the United States and Europe are funding it. So it's like, so it really is just like there's this petulant child who refuses to listen to anything the parents have to say. But the adults in the room continue funding continue giving the child the allowance to allow them to continue doing what they're doing. I can't believe it. I lost the article. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Did I do this? I did this. That's what I did. I know what I did. That's what I did. So Israel is just like storming around doing anything it wants to do, while the United States basically just goes, "Oh, I wish you wouldn't. I wish, you know, you should, maybe it'd be a bad decision to do that, you know. Maybe a better decision would be to try to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis that you're facing." And Netanyahu and like the Israelis are like, "Nah, we're gonna bomb those bitches. If they come over here, we're gonna drop 1,000 bombs on them for Amalek." And America's just like, "Well, geez, I guess so. You know, I'm gonna say you shouldn't. But here's another $100 billion, sweetie." Peck on the cheek. Like, defund them. Stop giving them money. Like, how hard would that be? Stop giving them their allowance. Isn't that because Israel are a nation of people and the funding is coming from Israelis in Europe and America that it keeps following? Well, the actual arrangement, John Mearsheimer did a great breakdown of this, and is that you have AIPAC, and AIPAC is a lobby group, and the lobby gives a lot of money to senators and congresspeople and the president in order to lobby them in their interests, but a lot of their money comes from funding that the United States provides. So the United States gives the funding to Israel. Israel gives funding to AIPAC. AIPAC gives funding to Congress people, senators, and the president, who then in turn give funding to Israel. You see how that works? See how that works? See the fun little loop? Right? You see the closed circuit that's been created? The little feedback loop? Right? And then, of course, what trajectory is that going on? Israel is not powerful. That's the big thing. That's like the big fart joke of all of it, right? Like that at the bottom of the well, at the bottom of this like ridiculous thing that they're on. Right? Israel is not powerful. Like, Israel is losing to Hamas. Like, it did a ton of damage in Gaza, right? It did a ton of damage to Gaza. It knocked over tons of buildings, murdered lots of children. Congratulations. They're not really killing many Hamas, right? They're really struggling fighting against these ragtag band of rebels that exist in a tunnel system in Gaza, right? They've really tipped their hand. The Houthis down here, right, have essentially created a blockade. Right here. They've created a blockade, won't let Israeli ships through. So if Israel wants to trade anywhere along this line, right, they got to go all the way around Africa. Increases the cost of their shipping by like a factor of 3. And America has essentially capitulated everything to Yemen and said, please lift this blockade. We'll give you anything you want if you'll do it. It's not really a sign of strength. It's not really a sign that says we're powerful, that we can handle fighting you, right? And this, of course, has led Iran to start to bully, because Iran sees how weak America is, and Iran sees how weak Israel actually is. That the image of strength has been broken. The illusion of Israeli strength has been broken. Now, Israel has a lot of influence in America, certainly because of that little loop that I talked about, where America funds Israel, Israel funds AIPAC, AIPAC funds senators, congressmen, and the president, which then in turn vote for funding Israel. So that creates a nice little feedback loop. And what the most pathetic part about it, right, is that when you actually break down how much funding is going to these senators and congresspeople and all that kind of stuff, like how much funding these guys are actually receiving, it's not that much. Like, these senators and these Congress people are cheap. It's pathetic how cheap they are. Like, if we were talking about, like, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, just enormous, overwhelming sums of money, just like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to buy a private island. But we're talking about, like, $10,000. Like, literally, for some of these guys. Straight up AIPAC is just like, vote Israel. We'll give you $10K. These guys are like, I will sacrifice babies to the god Amalek. $10,000. It's just like, who knew that our politicians were so pathetic? Right? Who knew that they were so easy to sway with just nonsense amounts of money? Just like straight up, like, total garbage. But it just shows you the weakness of the system of capital, and it shows you the weakness of the West generally. That, like, you sort of have this imagined idea in the abstract space that it's like a politician who's like, well, I'm here to try to do right by the American people. I'm here to do okay and to make good decisions. And then, like, they open up a chest and it's full of jewels and gems, and, like, there's a beautiful woman being like, oh, I'll marry you, and it's billions of dollars, infinite wealth, eternal. And the guy's like, oh, I can't resist the pull of Israel, right? Like, that's how you imagine it. But instead, it's like a guy it's like a slimy shoe salesman who's like, I conned all those people to vote for me. Well, time to go grab a bunch of pussies and do some sex trafficking. What's that, AIPAC? Sure, I'll vote for your thing for $5,000. Well, is there some prostitute I can beat up? And that's what your system actually looks like. Like, it's pathetic. Like, and these last few years, the Ukraine debacle, and it's a total debacle, like a catastrophe for the West. I literally have an article that really highlights Russia will grow faster than the US and all other advanced economies this year, the IMF says. Total, complete, catastrophic disaster for the West. Could not be more disastrous. The only thing that would be more disastrous than this is if Russia just launched the nukes. Right? Like, this is economically speaking, on the economic battlefield that Marxists fight upon, this is a complete and total catastrophe for the West. And it's a catastrophe of their own making for no legitimate reason whatsoever. Politically, the debacle in Ukraine has pushed Russia into the hands of China and into the global South, where they have built a coalition in order to push back against the West. Oh no, they don't include China in that, methane. No. Come on now. Come on, methane. Have you learned nothing? Methane. Have you learned nothing? from your years of study. Business Insider does not consider China an advanced economy. Come now. When Business Insider is discussing the international community, it very explicitly means Europe, America, Australia. Those are the developed economies, and no one else counts. Maybe they did. Hold on. Control F, China. Ooh. In its energy trade, sustained oil and commodity exports, major markets like India and China. Russia's resilience against Western sanctions stems largely from its boundless alliance with China. Like, it's so embarrassing to watch. the West completely shoot itself in the foot this way. It's okay, Bethany. I understand. It's totally fine. I know it's easy to get lost in John's world, right? It's easy to get lost in like, no, we're all like we're a nation of peers. Like we're a world where we have nations, and those nations are all peers with one another, and we should discuss those and trade and have equity. Like that's a nice place to live, right? So I understand. It's tough once you get into this mindset to turn and get into the Western mindset of those Chineses don't have a developed economy, even though most of the world trades with them more than us. USA, USA, USA. So Russia is developing faster than the United States and Europe. For those of us who have been paying attention, come on, I had it right in front of me. There it is. For those of us who have been paying attention, this isn't a surprise, right? The United States has been gutting its infrastructure, has been cutting spending, has been following the anarcho-capitalist line, right? Of increasing privatization, of doing all this kind of stuff, and it's led to a decline of their society. Because fundamentally, to circle back around on the anarcho-capitalist stuff, the incoherence of anarcho-capitalism is that their statement is the fastest way to build a society is to destroy it. And that the destruction of the public service, the destruction of the civil service, the destruction of community, the destruction of infrastructure is the best way to build those things. Because some random guy, some big tough industrialist will show up and do it all for you. And they certainly won't re-implement slavery, and they certainly won't re-implement like child indentured servitude or anything like this. Oh wait, they definitely do. So America has been on this decline pattern for a long, long time. And Russia has not, in fact. They went through their neoliberal period, but Russia has not completely capitulated all things to this libertarian line the way that America has. Like, very recently they did a constitutional reform, and within that constitutional reform they explicitly said the minimum wage cannot fall below a subsistence living. So, like, that doesn't... You'd never see that in the West. You'd never see that in America, right? Yeah, since the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia didn't arrive to capitalism automatically. That is, many people kept working to the state. Today, Russia has the highest percentage of state workers, 40%. Yeah. So that helps insulate them. That helps create protection. Because the way capitalist systems work is that they build up, they create monopolies, and then they collapse. Right? That's how capitalist institutions actually work. Because the goal of the capitalist is not to build an institution. The goal is to extract wealth from that institution. So they don't care if the institution collapses. And so it does. And it's fairly routine. And of course, when the institutions collapse, millions of people are put out of work. There's mass poverty, mass desperation, all of this kind of stuff, while the capitalists walk away with the spoils. And so you want to create systems that insulate the public from that. And you see that in China, explicitly in China. That's basically what they do. When capitalist structures collapse and when institutions collapse, the Chinese step in and then seize the assets and then spread it into the populace, largely. Russia isn't that dramatic. It's not as explicit, but it has definitely passed like pretty hefty legislation that insulates the public from the worst outcomes of capital. Like, I don't really understand the word authoritarian. I just don't think the word authoritarian means anything. Like, what is authoritarian? Near as I can tell, authoritarian means we passed laws and expect people to follow them. Like, bedtimes are authoritarian. You know? Like, I guess that makes sense in an anarcho-capitalist world, but like to anybody with any kind of self-respect, right, and self-discipline and expectation that the society actually deliver anything, like, yeah, I want my society to pass laws, and I expect people to follow those laws that we pass, right? Like, it just seems odd. Like, authoritarian has crept into the discourse, and I'm supposed to have this like, authoritarian, oh my god, it's authoritarian, oh my god. And then when I look at authoritarian, it's like, oh, they passed a law and they expect people to follow that law, and if people don't follow that law, they get punished. Oh, sounds like a society. Sounds like a civil society. Okay. So when I see people like just bandying around the word authoritarian, it's a big red flag for me. I get very like, okay. You think bedtimes are authoritarian. Got it. Yeah, authoritarian, a system of power derived by the authority of authors. Putin is basically a dictator who has been in power in years without election. He's been elected several times, like Stalin. Stalin was elected on several occasions. Stalin, in fact, tried to step down on 4 separate occasions, and the populace wouldn't let him. Like, please do not attempt to lecture me about the Soviet Union or about China, dude. Like, you think Milley is doing a good job. Like, I think it's better if you just remain silent and learn something, because it's, like, every single time you talk to me, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, I get this little guy inside of me that's like, oh, man, I cannot believe that there's a person like this living in the world this way. It's just, like, Putin's not a dictator. Like, it's just crazy. Like, I will acknowledge that it was Yeltsin. Yeltsin essentially oversaw a coup, right? Like, there were literally tanks in the streets in Russia in the 90s. So there was like a capitalist coup that occurred in Russia, and the system of capital forced its way in, and neoliberal reforms and reformists forced themselves in, and created a wedge for capitalists to come into the society, which was helped and bolstered by figures like Gorbachev and Yeltsin, and that's for sure the truth. And Putin, but the idea that Putin is unelected and that he's a dictator, I don't think that that's serious, right? I don't think that that's very serious at all. And I think it really kind of denigrates the actual system that exists in Russia. Is it a Westminster parliamentary democracy? No. Right? But to pretend as though Putin is a dictator is unserious at the highest possible level. Like, Putin wins elections. People go and vote for Putin. Right? There are other parties in the system. There's a communist party in the system, and that communist party gets like 25% of the vote every time. Like, Putin's not winning these elections in big giant slam dunks, right? And just because you don't know anything about them doesn't mean that they don't happen. So, and it looks that like the number one reason why people vote for Putin when polled and when asked is that they know who Putin is and they know what he's going to do. That the number one thing, he definitely won by a big amount in this last election, Ben. That's true. That's for sure true. The number one thing that I think people look for in leadership and in their leaders is stability. Oh, my man from South Korea, just basically towing the line, right? Basically just towing the line for the CIA on this one. Dude, do I really need to go down this rabbit hole? So Jeffrey Sachs did a really good breakdown of this. He's a professor that in 2009, right? In 2009, the CIA, the current CIA director, who was then the ambassador to Russia, wrote a paper or wrote an article, wrote a memo called, I'm going to misspell this in front of all of you. Niet means Niet. WikiLeaks, which you can find. It's easy to find, right? Niet means Niet. This is an article, or this was a memo that was written by William Burns, where he basically says, I have yet to find anyone who views Ukraine in NATO as anything other than a direct challenge to Russian interests. There could be no doubt that Putin would fight back hard. So this was written in 2008, I believe, perhaps 2009. So 2008, 2009, right? So William Burns, the ambassador to Russia, is telling the American system, if you try to get Ukraine into NATO, Russia will fight for it. Russia will go to war over it. 100% that will happen completely. That is a red line. No one in Russia will accept that. No one. So, what do the Americans do? Well, the Americans fund a coup, right? So there's the Euromaidan crisis, what's known as the Euromaidan crisis that happens in Kiev, right? So this is a protest movement. 2014 happens in Ukraine that gets co-opted by the Americans. Literally, John McCain went down there and was yelling into a microphone that we're going to support you people against Putin and all this kind of stuff. We've got the Secretary of State at the time, literally in a phone call talking about the coup. We've got the people that they funded, neo-Nazis, most of them, right sector, C16, the Azov battalion. These guys get funded, and their leaders outright say, yeah, if it wasn't for us, the Nazis, the whole thing would have turned into a gay pride parade, right? And so this turns into the coup, the 2014 coup, where they overthrow Yanukovych, put in their own guy, right? And then they take those Nazis, Donbass War, Wikipedia. I don't usually like using Wikipedia, but it's a shorthand. And they do the war in Donbass, right? So after the 2014 coup committed by the Americans against Ukraine, they go into the Donbass region, which is this region right here, and they begin shelling it. There's a great guy that I think everybody should seek out by the name of Russell Bentley. This guy right here. Russell Bentley, when that coup happened, he moved to the Donbass region in order to fight the Nazis and started to report from that region. When Putin invaded, all of his stuff got taken off the internet. They purged him as much as they possibly could, but you can still find him. You can still find him in interviews with the Gray Zone. You can still find him around. He still gets into conversations with people, and he likely still has all of his reporting. He's probably saved it for himself. And he was reporting from the region the entire time, showing footage of Nazi flags, showing footage of these Nazis, reporting about the Nazis in the Donbass War. When the Donbass War breaks out, Putin immediately begins to try to negotiate a peace. Zelensky, in that process, is elected. They hold another election. The guy that got put in as a coup gets thrown out. Zelensky gets put in. Zelensky wins the election by saying, I'm going to end the Donbass War. Right? So before Putin invades, there's already a war happening on his border where neo-Nazis are shelling people. Do you think that the Russians have a history with Nazis? I do. So so Zelensky gets elected by saying, I'm going to end this war. And to his credit, he attempted. He went down to the front line and he told the Nazis to leave and to end this and to shut this down. You know what the Nazis said? Fuck off. Because at the end of the day, those Nazis don't give a shit about Zelensky. They care about who? NATO. Why? Because NATO's funding them. That's who's giving them their money. That's who they actually listen to. So NATO doesn't give a shit that Zelensky tried to end the war because NATO knew they weren't going to do that. And so Zelensky just got on side because he started to see that, well, this is to my benefit. I tend to believe that he's ruling with a gun in his back most of the time. So, as this is all happening, Putin is attempting desperately to find a peaceful solution diplomatically. The Minsk Accords are his best shot. 2016. Is that right? Yeah, 2016, the Minsk Accords. Here, let me get that timeline completely correct. The Minsk agreements. It was drafted in 2014. In any case, okay, 2015, yeah, Minsk, which was signed on the 2015, so almost immediately, right? Almost immediately, they're getting into the Minsk agreements, right? And they're getting into the negotiations. The Chancellor of Germany came out later and said that the only reason we were negotiating peace with Putin was to bide time to further arm and fund the Nazis. She didn't use the word Nazis, but that's who they are, the Azov Battalion, in Donbass. So she outright admitted in front of the world and in front of everybody that they were not negotiating in good faith, and they had no intentions of abiding by that treaty. So the question that I continuously put at the feet of people who pretend as though Putin is the evil aggressor in all of this is, what should he have done? What should Putin have done? Let's take a look at this at what is actually happening in reality, in front of your face, instead of you living in this little abstract dream world that you choose to live in. You've got Nazis, the Azov Battalion, open Nazis who hold Nazi parades in a society that has swiftly begun to venerate Nazis of the past, Stepan Bandera, for example, literally renaming streets Stepan Bandera streets, straight up a World War II Nazi collaborator. You've got Nazis shelling ethnic Russians. This section of Ukraine is majority ethnic Russian, right? Not that long ago, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. Ukraine was part of this. Majority ethnic Russian. You've got a country that passes legislation that makes it a crime to speak Russian. You've got a society that is outright explicitly making it a crime to communicate in your language of origin. These are facts and things that are actually happening if you care to look at it in reality. So you've got Nazis who, might I remind you, killed 25 million Russians in living memory, shelling ethnic Russians. Hey, that's the border of Russia. That's the Russian border. So what ends up happening in Moscow is that they move towards diplomacy. That diplomacy fails. The Nazis continue shelling. There's a re-election of a new leader. That fails. The Nazis continue shelling. So the people of Russia themselves begin threatening Putin's legitimacy and his ability to continue as their leader, because they have a democracy where they vote for people. And they begin to threaten, hey, we could simply get rid of you and put somebody in who actually will go to war. So Putin, threatened by his own people, his own position threatened by not an overthrow, but an ouster through the electoral system, witnessing the Nazi bombing of Russians in Ukraine, seeing the end of a diplomatic resolution to all of this, chooses, finally, to invade the special military operation. His initial invasion is all along the border, everybody push in. Because his hope is that a military push-in will lead the entire world to go, whoa, 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 stop. Okay, we'll agree, we'll stop. Not what happens. Because Putin falls for the same, Putin has the same trouble that lots of Russian leaders have, and lots of communist leaders have had in the past, is that they think that their opponent is rational or reasonable. They underestimate the insanity of their opponent. And so after that doesn't work, and it almost did work, incidentally, Zelensky almost was willing to capitulate right there, but then Boris Johnson went in, right, and promised NATO backing and all this. Well, where's Johnson now? He's fucked off. And so Putin pulled all his troops, and they actually went into the Donbass, and now we've had this slow, protracted war ever since, where Russia is steadily pushing and steadily pushing and steadily pushing and steadily pushing. And Russia has already won, right? It's already won. Ukraine's never getting that territory back. That's over. NATO does not have the manpower to send into Ukraine. And what this has all done on the world stage, and it's a total fucking disaster, by the way. Like, it's a total disaster for the West. Worth pointing out. This entire situation was caused and created by the West. That the experts on the field, that's William Burns, current head director of the Central Intelligence Agency, then the Russian ambassador, outright said, no Russian anywhere will accept Ukraine going into NATO. For the most obvious reason you can imagine. This corridor is how Russia has always been invaded. This is a very, very, very strategic point for Russia. Russia needs Ukraine to be neutral in order to feel safe from its classical aggressor. Germany, within living memory, invaded Moscow, invaded Russia, killed 25 million Russians. France, Napoleon invaded Russia. How did he do it? By walking through Ukraine. Poland and Russia have a nice history. So Russia doesn't think that Europe is all buddy-buddy, nicey-nicey. Doesn't think that Europe is there to do nice things for Russia. They're very suspicious of Europe, and they have every reason to be suspicious of Europe. Europe is where the Nazis came from. So they need Ukraine to be neutral in order to feel safe from their classical enemies and their classical aggressors. And they view Ukraine becoming part of the NATO organization as an enormous military threat, because it allows NATO to put missiles and bombs and infrastructure on the border of Russia that can reach Moscow. Unacceptable. And if you think that that is acceptable, then you're a fascist. You're a creepy weirdo. A strange person who needs to rethink their entire life, let alone their own position. It is perfectly acceptable for a country to say to a large military organization that includes the country that spawned the Nazis, that invaded your country, hey, let's have a buffer. No, let's not put missile systems on our border. That's cool. Let's have a buffer. And they were so firm about that our own ambassador and current director of the CIA acknowledged it and said so, and said, don't do that. This is what you'll get. So we did it anyway, and what did we get? Like, anybody who tries to convince me that Putin is in the wrong for doing what he's doing is the same person who's trying to convince me that the bear should not have got upset when I put a stick in its eye. You walked up to a sleeping bear, you took a stick, and you jammed it into its eye, and then you have the temerity to try to convince me that it's the bear's fault for getting mad and fighting back. I have no sympathy whatsoever for Europe. I have no sympathy whatsoever for America. I look at this article that says that Russia is gaining in power, that Russia's economy is advancing faster than theirs, and I giggle like a school child internally. You reap what you sow, you get what you deserve. You stuck your stick in the eye of the bear, and the bear mauled you. Get fucked. And brilliantly, like this is where Putin really, in my mind, reveals his true intelligence. Right? Like, Putin is going to be seen as a very critical and very important Russian leader. More important than Yeltsin, more important than Gorbachev, Khrushchev. Like, he's definitely going to be considered on the same level as Stalin in terms of history. And that's because he pivoted away from the West. That Russia wanted to be the tragedy of all of this, the real tragedy of this from the Western perspective, is that Russia wanted to be part of NATO. Russia wanted to be part of the IMF and part of the World Bank and part of these organizations. They wanted to be part of the G20 and part of the G7. They were part of the G7 for a minute. They were in the G8 for a little while. That Russia was working hard to integrate itself with the West. Right? That was Gorbachev and Yeltsin's vision for Russia. That's the reason why Khrushchev shit on Stalin, to separate Russia from its communist roots so that they wouldn't get invaded by these people anymore, so that they would join forces with the West, so that perhaps the West would not invade them, that the West is sending out this message saying we want all of the countries of the world to be liberal democracies. And so, because if you're a liberal democracy, then we have no reason to invade you. And so peace will spread throughout the land. And so Russia went, okay, sure, don't invade me and kill 25 million people, right? Let's link up. And when Putin gets voted into office and when he wins the election to become the leader of Russia, that's what he thinks he's there to do. There's this wonderful, I should find this photo album again of him meeting all of the world leaders. And he meets the Queen of England, and he meets the current president, and he meets the presidents of Germany and France and all of these people. And you can see that he's over the moon about it. You can see he looks like a schoolboy meeting, oh, wow, it's this, oh, goodness. And he's like, I've made it. I'm here. I'm here to lead the Russians to the promised land. A future of peace and prosperity for everyone, where the Europeans will no longer be a threat to us. We will integrate with them, and we will become allies, and we will work together. and face problems collectively, and we will do that. And over the process of his career, he watches that dream disintegrate in front of his eyes. And he finally concludes, Russia will never be part of the West. Russia will never be integrated into the Western systems. The West will never allow it. The West will never permit it. That the West's goal for Russia is to destroy Russia. The West's goal for Russia is to dismantle it, peel it apart, and harvest it for resources like it did to Libya, like it did to Yugoslavia, like it did to Iraq, Afghanistan, like it wants to do to Iran, like it's done to Africa, like it's done to South America. It wants to do it to Russia too. And Russia turned away from the West and integrated itself into the global South and into those economies, and that's what Putin did for Russia. It's an incredible journey. It's an incredible story that Putin took. And he will absolutely stand atop his peers in Russia and be seen as a highly successful leader who stood up for the Russians, who fought for the Russians, who fought for their prosperity, who fought for their success, who fought for them to live as free as they could from war and death and plague and famine. And he did everything he could to put Russia on the right path so that when he's gone, the next generation will thank him for his efforts, and they will. Putin raised the prosperity of Russia during his tenure. He won every war he fought. He fought against the Americans in Georgia when they couped Georgia and won. He fought against the Americans in Syria when they attempted to coup the government there and won. He fought. He gave one of the most scathing indictments of America and of NATO when they murdered Gaddafi in cold blood. And now he's winning and has won the largest war that has happened in Europe since World War II. He's won every war he's fought. He's increased the prosperity of his own citizens. And he's connected them to a trade organization that has ensured their prosperity. Putin is absolutely not a power-mad, power-hungry leader. You got to look to the United States to see that. Putin is a Russian. And near as I can tell, that's all he actually is. That he doesn't look to me to be a capitalist or a communist or any kind of ist or ism or anything. To me, he just looks like a man who said, okay, this is the responsibility of leadership, and I'm going to do my best with it. And I think he's done a fine job. Better than George W. Bush, better than Clinton, better than Reagan, better than Bush Sr., better than Trump, better than Biden, better than Obama. Erica Monette asks, What are you talking about? Hold on, sorry. Are you accusing Russia of being fascist? Get totally fucked, dude. No. But this, look, I have never, Fenriz the Great, Wagner weren't angels, right? I have never seen any evidence whatsoever of your claim. And I've asked a lot of people. Like, this whole Wagner is Nazis thing. Where is your evidence? Where is any evidence, any article written by any institution anywhere that is actually showing the Nazism that exists in Wagner? Like, I'm sure that you can find a Nazi in a mercenary group. But I have not seen a single scrap of evidence that shows that this is a Nazi organization fighting for Nazi principles. The way that the Azov Battalion is a Nazi organization fighting for Nazi. So you're supporting Putin because Russia used to be Soviet Union once? No. That's a desperate misunderstanding of my position. I am supporting Putin because he is defending his country from capitalist imperialism. That I live within the heart of an empire. A capitalist empire. And that capitalist empire is coming to an end. No. Putin is a Russian. That's all. Even if he was a capitalist, right? Nations should defend themselves from the American empire. Like, I actually don't give a shit. Like, let's say Russia is capitalist. They should still defend themselves. Like, what's happening in America and what the Americans and the Europeans are doing in the world is insane. Is absolutely insane. And every country anywhere, and I don't care about their configuration, should defend themselves from it. Because the capitalists, the American capitalists, have made it very clear that they will destroy your country. They will destroy your country and they will enslave your citizens. They will murder millions of you. They will bomb your infrastructure. They will destroy it. They will turn your country into rubble. They've done it in the past. They're doing it to themselves. Like, look how America treats its own citizens. You think it's going to be nice to you? So I don't give a shit. You can say that Putin is capitalist. Great. Fantastic. He should still defend himself from the American empire. 100%. And I think if you think otherwise, you're nuts. Like, you're crazy, kooky, banana go nuts. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Defend yourself. You have the right to do so. Do it. Like, Fenriz, man, like, I don't tolerate stupidity. I need you to understand that. So if you're just going to be stupid in my chat, I'm just going to ban you. Like, full stop. I have a zero patience tolerance for stupidity. Right? And right now you're acting very stupidly. Yeah, and of course there's LGBT propaganda. Like, the what the West has done, right? And you're widely insulated from it, right? Within the cult, right? That they're trying to put a happy little smiley face on their imperialism, right? And they're trying to say that, oh, well, because we have this gay rights position, right, that means that when we invade, we have the right to invade because we have gay rights. We're bringing gay rights, and we're so much more superior and better than you are, right? Excuse me for a second here, guys. I just gotta... Like, when people reveal to you that they're desperately stupid, I think the best thing to do is just get rid of them. Like, this is the one thing I'm actually really respecting about this Korean fella. And I gotta tell you, if you're still there, my Korean man, you know why I know you're not stupid? Right? I think that you've bought in to a propaganda system that is around you, and that there's a lot of people around you that think the way that you think. You know how I know you're not stupid? Because every single time I've unloaded on you, you've listened to it. You've heard it, and you haven't gotten heightened in your emotional state and started responding stupidly, and allowed your stupidity to take over, and started to vomit all over the chat a bunch of stupidity. Right? That tells me pretty cleanly, my South Korean man, that you are actually a smart fellow. And the fact that you're still here listening to me tells me that you're curious and you're interested and you're still listening in. So that tells me that you're smart enough to recognize and realize, finally at the end of all of it, that the system of capital has every reason for you to buy into this idea. To buy into this idea that if I sacrifice my entire life to the pursuit of capital, that's positive. Making someone else rich with my labor is a net good. The system of capital has every reason for you to want to believe that. And I am here to constantly remind everybody that it is a lie. It is an obvious lie. It is a provable lie. You can show that it is a lie. And the moment you recognize that it is a lie, it is impossible to see that it is anything other than that. Once the veil is lifted from your eyes, once the illusion is broken, and once you accept that it is a lie, then all you see is that it is a lie. Because it is. And the evidence for that is overwhelming. Like, if you are living in South Korea, you work longer than everybody else. You get trash for wages. You have no free time. You have no sex life. The birth rate is in the toilet. Everybody's working their asses off. And then you look up on top of the hill and there's literally 3 guys with more wealth than everybody in your society combined. And then you call that freedom. There is nobody who is more hopelessly enslaved than those who believe that they are free. And if you are looking at the system of capital and have the delusion in your mind that the capitalists have made you free, then you are the most effective slave in the society. And I am here to recommend you stop. That you stop participating. That you stop engaging. That you stop sacrificing yourself for people you've never met who don't give a shit about you at all, who don't care one iota about whether you live or die, outside of what it's going to do for their portfolio. Because you're not here in this reality to work for these assholes you've never met. You're not here to slave away and to spend your effort and your time and your labor on people who don't give a shit about you. There's more going on in your life. There's more happening. Like, you are a randomly generated life form in a randomly generated location on a randomly generated planet being flung around a burning star. And you think the people who are trying to help you are the people who benefit from you spending your fractional, brief, fleeting time on this planet. You think that they're interested in benefiting you? And the saddest part about it all is that while we scrabble around trying to make sense, trying to make a living, trying to make wealth and money and prosperity for ourselves, while we scrabble around looking to our base survival to try to justify our existence because food and shelter is withheld from us. So while we sell ourselves into wage slavery to pay for our existences and scrabble around trying to make these ends meet while they continuously raise the rent and raise prices and lower our wages, we waste our entire lives doing it instead of asking, why are we here? Why were we born? Why is there life? What is this that we are in? We're so lost in the pathetic game of capital that we haven't even begun to play the game of life. And to me, that's a goddamn shame. That's a real goddamn shame. It's just the saddest possible response. Invisible lines on a screen mean nothing at all. Dollars in bank accounts that were invented by us in the first place mean nothing at all. Stock market portfolio lines going up on a screen are literally just the feelings of rich people, while they grind up real, tangible assets for invisible numbers on a screen. It's sad. Well, we've reached the end of this one. Always remember, guys, each and every one of us is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.